Okay, Podsters, this is it. This is your tipping point, your moment to take action or live with never knowing what could have been. We all have that thing that we know we are meant to do that scares us, that we're not sure we can do, and that we know we need a little help doing. My Do the Thing Fall Retreat is happening October 13th through 15th in where else? Cape Cod, in the tranquil seaside town of Truro, where I've hand selected a beach house for 9 like-minded women to get together and do the thing. You already know that there's a life waiting for you on the other side of this thing. And this powerful, intimate 2.5-day workshop is exactly what you need. If you don't do it now, you probably never will. Don't live with regret. Do the thing. Click the link, fill out the very brief application. Let's hop on a call because I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. Together, let's do the thing. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, keynote speaker, best-selling author, executive coach, and equity evangelist who literally wrote the book on women in confidence.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter who works with female entrepreneurs who are done putting safe and general content out there and ready to walk the fine line between honoring their bold voices and perspectives and honoring their professionalism. We are on fire and on a mission to inspire and empower you, and who are we kidding? The world, to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table. If you're looking for straight talk and a weekly shot of confidence, you've landed in the right place.
Beth and I met while collaborating on my #1 bestseller, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. We hit it off and we knew right away that we needed to keep these important conversations going so that women around the globe will speak up and stop building our own glass ceiling. So here we are, coming at you weekly with a perfect blend of realistic strategies, actionable tools, and real life stories to bring these important and somewhat controversial ideas to life. Doing so with humor, kindness, and the occasional shenanigans.
Get ready to feel empowered and inspired to speak up, to stand out, and to build your confidence toolkit. Note to men or women who are not working in a professional capacity, we see you too, and we promise you the conversations here will inspire you as well. So buckle up, folks, because here we go.
Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary, Nance.
Podsters, we are coming up on our 1-year anniversary. Can you believe it, Beth? 1 year.
I can't believe it. That was fast.
Not only was that fast, we have released an episode every week for a year. That's amazing, with the exception of like a couple holiday weeks, but that's amazing.
It's a big year.
Do you want to tell everybody what we're doing for our very special anniversary episode?
So for our anniversary, not only are we going on LinkedIn Live to record.
June 15th, 12 o'clock.
June 15th, 12 o'clock.
Yep.
But we are going to talk about what you tell us you want to hear about.
Oh my God.
We want to hear what you guys have to say.
That's amazing. You mean the Podsters can get in touch with us and tell us what they want to hear about?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Amazing. I bet in order to do that, we have a lot of options. I'll bet that they could DM either one of us on LinkedIn or Insta.
Totally.
Ka-ching. They could leave a comment on my YouTube station, channel, it's a channel. They could hit more info on Beth's website or my website. Or, are you ready for this? Can we get a drum roll? We need a drum roll. You can send us a voice message. It doesn't matter where you are. We are streaming in 36 countries. It does not matter where you are. If you are listening on Apple, you can go to the information about the podcast, click on episode website. It will bring you out to our episode website, and there you can send a voice message and it will get to us and we will hear your voices, which we love nothing more. So let us know what you want to hear. What else you got, Beth?
That's it. I'm excited to hear other people's voices, something instead of our own. That would be nice.
Exactly. All right. Peace out. We will see you all at the special anniversary episode on June 15th, 12 o'clock on LinkedIn Live.
Bye.
Ah.
And here we are. Hello, Podsters. Boy, are you in for a treat.
It's exciting. It's going to be a good one.
I mean, Beth, this has been the highlight of my week. Is it the highlight of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our favorite diehard topics.
Whoop, whoop. So you all know we love a good boundary over here at Unmute Yourself, the podcast. And today we have Barb Nangle, right? Did I pronounce your last name right?
Nangle.
Nangle. Okay,
Nangle.
great. One of the key tenets of being a podcast host, but I blew right over that. Anyway, so Barb is many things, one of which is a boundary coach. And I'm going to share a little bit of her background, but what I'd like to do is have Barb tell you a little bit more after I share her background about kind of what led her to the path of this specific boundary coach. I think it's fantastic. She's a coach, a speaker, a writer. She's the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. And she even has her own podcast, which I have to tell you all, it's pretty phenomenal. As a matter of fact, I was just listening to it. And taking notes for questions because it's fantastic. So Barb, tell us a little bit about, I hope I didn't lose you because I can't see you at all. Nope. Are you there?
I can see you.
Okay. I can't see you. Tell us about what a boundary coach does and why you felt it was important to offer this specific offering.
So I coach people on how to build boundaries in their personal and professional lives. And I do that through group programs. I do that through a private boundaries coaching program. And I became a boundaries coach because I did not know this, but I was a lifelong codependent. I never had a discussion about boundaries. Clearly, I didn't have any until I got into 12-step recovery at the age of 52. And though I have had substance use problems and I'm a recovering compulsive overeater, my main wound is codependence. And the antidote to codependence is boundaries. So if anybody doesn't know that word, I didn't either, even though I was a lifelong seeker and self-help junkie and had been in therapy for almost 37 years, not entirely straight when I got into recovery. So a codependent is somebody who is focused outside themselves. So typically we care so much more what other people think about us than what we think about ourselves. We're concerned with what other people are doing and thinking, and we feel like it's our job, and maybe it is our job, to take care of other people. So for example, a lot of people in healthcare are codependents. A lot of people in helping professions are codependents. And because learning how to build healthy boundaries was such a game changer for me, after coaching for a while, I decided to really focus on boundary setting. One, because every client I ever had needed help with boundaries. Two, I'm super good at helping people build healthy boundaries. And I think it's because of my lived experience, because I know what it feels like in my body to not have boundaries. And I know what it feels like in my body to have them. And I can articulate not just the emotional experience, but the journey to other people. And then also when you're a life coach, you really need a niche. And so it just made sense for me.
Amazing.
So what I've done is I took I would say a 2 to 3 year sort of meandering process to learn how to build healthy boundaries. And I've accelerated that process for other people by creating a bunch of modules. So when I learned to build boundaries, I don't think initially I understood that was what I was doing. But after I had a pretty good sense of boundaries, I started reading about them. And I retroactively came to understand what I was doing, like what this boundary process was building, I was going through what the concepts were and all that. But in all that reading, everything was words. And I'm a pretty visual learner. So I would draw pictures to kind of depict how I would picture that. And then those turned into handouts, which turned into a workbook, which turned into the spine of my coaching program.
That's amazing. So can I ask you a question? Because I want to go back to codependent. So I've heard a lot of people say, I'm a people pleaser and I'm an obliger. Okay. In my layman's opinion, that to me is not the same thing as being codependent.
I would say codependent is people pleasing as an aspect of codependence. So probably most codependents are people pleasers, but
So
not
tell us
all of
what it
them.
means to be codependent. What does that mean?
So codependent means you're not really relying on what's going on in here and you're not focused on what's going on internally. You're really focused on other people. Like, what are they doing? What are they saying? A typical codependent is someone who is a loved one of an addict of some kind. And so they end up entirely neglecting themselves and focusing almost entirely on the other person, trying to get them to stop, to get them into treatment, to control the other person. And meanwhile, they end up completely neglecting themselves and making the other person the center of their life. Even if it's not an addict, it could be someone who is chronically ill or has, socioeconomic problems or something like that, but someone who has it typically way worse off than they do. And maybe they'll even justify it with like, I've been given so much, so, I have to give to other people. And I will say, I am a former codependent. I call myself a recovered codependent. I'm a former people pleaser, rescuer, fixer, saver. I didn't know any of those terms. When I first heard people pleaser, I did not believe that was me. I was like, oh, that my friend Joanne, she's a people pleaser. And then I started to learn about that. And the thing about that is like I was looking to please people. Meanwhile, I wasn't pleasing me. And then I would get resentful at people. And I also thought I was, quote, nice. I thought, oh, I do this because I'm nice. Well, nice people tell the truth. So they don't say yes to things that they don't really want to say yes to. And they say no to things that they don't really want to do. And they don't live their lives trying to get other people's approval, which I didn't really realize that was what I was doing. So for me, being nice isn't so important. Being kind is much more important. Kind people tell the truth and they're honest and they don't manipulate other people trying to get them to like them. So
Yeah,
I think I went off on a tangent. And did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay, because I could literally talk about this stuff all day long.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Beth, by the way, just jump in whenever you want to jump in.
Sure.
Yeah. I really like the idea of kind versus nice, because we talk a lot about boundaries and being clear and kind. You're not being clear and nice. Nice would be, you're being clear and kind. You can be kind without feeling like you have to be nice. You can deliver bad news being kind. You can,
right. Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah. Actually, there was something in there that I wanted to say that I just remembered what it was, which is that, I was a volunteeraholic before I got into recovery. And I just recently looked, I volunteered for 13 different nonprofit organizations over the years. And I actually give more service to my community now that I have healthy boundaries than I ever did before. And it's because I do it from a place of abundance rather than a place of lack. And I mean that in two ways. One, I pour from my overflow, not from my cup. And the reason my cup is overflowing is because I fill that first. And two, when I used to go to the world, I went there from a place of lack, grasping for like approval. Like what I really wanted was people to think I was helpful. And what I did not want is for them to think I was a bad person. So I went to the world being like, like me, approve of me. And now when I go to the world, I go to the world to give what I have, which is love, because I fill myself with love first. So I always liked myself and had high self-esteem, but I realized I really didn't love myself. And I think my problem was low self-worth. And it was actually the process of building healthy boundaries that got me to really love myself and feel worthy.
Yeah, it'll change your life. There's no question.
Oh, hell yeah.
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Beth.
That's okay. I feel like when it comes to self-worth, it's like this hamster wheel, right? Like if you have low self-worth, you're not looking for anyone else to treat you any better than you think
Right.
you're worthy of.
Right.
So they
Yeah.
don't treat you as you have worth. And then you're like, oh, they're not treating me better, so I don't have worth. And
Right.
I think that's a
Right.
really tough wheel to be stuck
Yeah.
on.
Right. And I think like the reason I say that boundaries helped me with that, because I was a chameleon. I didn't know what I liked and didn't like. And the process of setting boundaries, which has to be an experimental process, by the way, is you figuring out, well, what do I actually like and what do I not like? And then articulating that to other people. So you get to know yourself better. And then as you start to stand up for yourself and set the boundaries, you feel better about yourself, which makes it easier to set the next boundary. And it's like this iterative process. And you also get a taste of what life is like with healthy
Mhm.
boundaries, and it
Mhm.
is awesome. And it's so much more peaceful, and I have so much more peace and serenity, so freedom in so many ways. I think, for me, among other things, an important piece of setting boundaries is learning is basically making choices in your life.
Mhm.
I felt compelled to help people. Actually, true story from 20 minutes ago. So this is still in me. I don't act it anymore. I'm taking a walk. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm walking by a bus stop, and this gentleman says to me, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you know which way is downtown?" And I'm like, "It's that way." And he's like, "Oh, I think I'm at the wrong bus stop." And I said, I don't know anything about buses. And for a millisecond, I had this idea, like, can I go home and get in my car and drive him to the train station in time to get on Nancy's podcast? Like, that
Mhm.
was a split second, right? I
Mhm.
don't act on things like that before, but that impulse to be like, this is a stranger. I'm going to go 17,000 times out of my way to help somebody because they need help. Like, I just don't do that anymore.
Right, right. It's a great example because it's still in your head. It's
Mhm,
stopping yourself, right? You're not going to
mhm,
change how you're hardwired, or you will
mhm.
eventually, but
Right.
it's
Yes. I have
it's
new neural
stopping
pathways.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great tee up because I wanted to go back to when you said a lot of times you or women or people want people to think they're helpful. So for the podsters who are listening, this is a really good example of if you work for yourself, this is overdoing and overcommitting to your client. You want your client to think you're helpful. You want to keep helping them and helping them and helping them. If you're in the
Mhm,
corporate world, this could be a situation where somebody says, hey, can you take care of this for me? Can you do this? Can you work
mhm,
on this project? Can you do this?
mhm,
Or
mhm,
whatever, or repeatedly doing jobs that are not within your job scope.
mhm,
So as you're listening, podsters, it's important to think, okay, it doesn't matter who you are, or where you are. And if you're at home, that's a whole different story, which we'll get into in a second. That it's setting the boundaries doesn't make you not helpful.
mhm,
It actually makes you more helpful, I would say,
mhm,
which I,
mhm,
I know you agree with, Barb. Um, and you mentioned that it's an experimental process, and Beth and I talked about this recently, actually.
mhm,
The reward is the behavior. So the reward is all of this freedom that you get. Like, I'm nervous when I set a boundary. It actually depends on where, when, but the
mhm,
reward is I get to decide. I get to live my life the way I want to
mhm,
live it. I get to
mhm,
I get to teach people how to treat me. That's the
mhm.
reward for the moment of uncomfortableness.
Absolutely. Yeah, freedom.
Right.
And I want to say something about this uncomfortableness. So now, a lot of the people that I work with are in recovery. It's a 12-step recovery for something, right? So what I say to them is that they'll say like, "Oh, this is hard." I'm like, "Listen, if you're in recovery, you've been doing hard your whole life. Which hard are you going to pick? The hard that you're doing that is only going to get worse and will never end, or this temporary hard that's going to get easier where you have freedom on the other side?"
Mhm.
And the other thing about that is the discomfort. I call it comfortable versus comforting. So your old patterns are comfortable because they're so familiar, but they're not comforting. They're not bringing you comfort. And if you step out of that comfort zone and learn this new, quote, hard behavior, there is comfort on the other side.
Amazing. And comfort in your own skin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is so I absolutely feel comfortable in my own skin. Now, I mentioned I'm in recovery for compulsive overeating. I'm down over 100 pounds from my top weight, but my comfort in my own skin has absolutely nothing to do with the weight. It has to do primarily with boundaries, but also trauma recovery, which, hello, not having healthy boundaries is a trauma response, and I didn't know that I was traumatized. And denied it in the beginning, which is also a trauma response, by the way.
I would love to just go back quickly to the concept of what being kind is, about telling people the truth and being honest without any sort of manipulation or anything like that. And I think it's tricky because I am the person that people come to when they want a straight answer. But sometimes when you give the straight answer, people don't see that as kind.
Well, people with healthy boundaries don't. I know I didn't. I used to think people were assholes when they just laid it on the line and said things like it was and told me the truth and didn't try to sugarcoat it. And I actually just did a post the other day where I said, if someone's prying, here's what you say. I don't discuss that with others. Period. Right? I didn't say anything else. Somebody commented to me, you would say that to a friend? How rude. And I'm like, I used to think that too when I didn't have healthy boundaries. You don't have to discuss anything with anybody. I don't care if it's your mom. You do not have to. You can choose to, but you don't have to, So like that person thought that I was rude for suggesting that someone say, I don't discuss that with others.
Yeah, I had a very similar situation. I had dealt with a health issue recently, and I chose to tell very few people. And other people were like, "Oh, you're not going to tell so and so," and you're not. And I would say, "Why? What's the benefit to me of telling so and so?" Well, they'll feel bad if they don't. Who cares? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not about them. It's
Right,
I want to know who's going to support me, and that's who I'm going to tell. And maybe I'll tell people afterwards, but not in the thick of it. I'm good.
Right. It's your choice and your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Barb, take us through, because this is like, I'm gonna play this to myself every night before bed. Take us through boundary setting 101.
Yeah. I mean, I don't call it that, but I would say that
what would you call it?
Yeah, I don't call it boundary setting 101, but some of the basics are, I mean, the way you know when and where to set boundaries is by what's important to you. So what I do with my clients is I have them all go through this process to discern their top 5 values.
Yeah.
And of course you have more than 5, but 5 is a large enough number that is meaningful and it's small enough that you can kind of hold it into your brain. And the reason that is so important is that for many of us, not many, I mean, I feel confident in saying 100% of people with poor boundaries do not live in integrity. And so a huge part of becoming someone with healthy boundaries is getting back into integrity. So telling the truth, not manipulating, that sort of thing. But
So
living in alignment.
Can we pause for a second? Can we just pause for a second? Because what do you mean by they don't live in integrity? What do you mean by that?
So they lie and they manipulate and they say, for example, my family is really important to me, but then they don't spend any time with their family, or, they say certain things are important to them and they don't do those things, or they volunteer to do things and then bitch about it. I mean, I did that all the time. And I'd be like, I can't believe she asked me to do that again. Well, she asked me 50 times because I said yes 49 times. So here I am complaining about that person behind their back. So people with healthy boundaries tell the truth. They directly communicate with the people involved in situations. They don't talk behind people's backs. They live in integrity.
Okay.
And so learning to form healthy boundaries is really about shoring up your integrity. And here's the thing. So guilt and shame is the main, and resentment, those are the main byproducts of not having healthy boundaries. And people often stop setting boundaries because they feel riddled with guilt and shame, and it's just too much. It's crippling, right? And I know that was me. I remember feeling like I was going to die at the thought of setting a boundary, never mind actually setting it. And what happens when you're in integrity is that it's like the guilt and shame sort of rolls off of you because, let's say, okay, health is a really important boundary that I have. Okay. An important value that I have. If I say, I don't want to meet you for brunch because I'm not doing social engagements around food anymore. If somebody wants to judge me for that, go ahead. I don't feel guilty or shameful for living in alignment with my value of health.
Okay, so I'm so glad you just said that because I'm having emotional dissonance or psychological dissonance over do not live in integrity, because to me that sounds judgy, and I'm going to ask you to let me finish my thought here. That sounds a little judgy, like, well, they don't have integrity. What you mean is they're not living in, and I wrote this down, but even before you said it, they're not living in alignment with their core values, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that is a way to define lack of integrity.
100%. Yep. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, and yes. And you live in this space. So for someone who's working 50 hours a week, just isn't as woke or self-aware. I want the people that are listening that aren't having these conversations to understand that we're not pointing the finger saying that you don't have integrity. We're saying you're not living in alignment with your core values, which is to me very different, but it's the same thing, but it sounds very different. Okay,
but
cool.
I also didn't know, like, I truly believed I was an honest person when I got into recovery. And no, not at all. Like, I lied about cigarettes, I lied about alcohol, I lied about drugs, I lied about food, I lied about relationships, but mostly I lied in the people-pleasing department. So I wasn't honest. I thought I was a value-centered person. I thought I was a woman of integrity, and I was not.
Amazing. So you start with, what are your top 5 values, right? So that could be family, health, joy, whatever, right? And then are you living your life, right? So then are you living your life in alignment with those? And how are you spending your time? Because that's a common, the priority wheel, I think it's called. I just did this, poor Danny. I did a 26-page PowerPoint workshop with him on retirement. And
this is your husband?
Yeah. Yeah. He was super pumped. And I
can imagine. Yeah.
So one of the things is a priority wheel. And I'm like, okay, what are your values and priorities, and how are you spending your time? So, so let's say our podsters get clear on, okay, these are my values. Then what?
Well, then you start making decisions in your life that support those being your top 5 values. So if you say health is a value, and actually I want to say something else about that. Like, even if there's another person that has the same top 5 values as you, doesn't mean they define it the same. So if I say health is a value for me, it could mean, primarily having to do with the food that I intake. For another person, it could be primarily about the physical exercise that they do. Or for another person, it could be taking supplements or getting immunizations or whatever. One person, it could be all of those things. Different people, have different aspects of the values. So even if somebody had the same top 5 values as you, they're going to be judging you from their values, and they're not the same, even if the names of them are the same. Even if we all say health is a top value, I could be doing something that you think is unhealthy. And that's okay. I get to do that because it's my life and my choice.
I mean, is it really? It is. Beth, let me ask you, you really think it's that simple? What are your top 5 values, and then live in integrity with those values?
I think it's simple, but not easy.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed. Of course.
Yeah.
And what if our values are in conflict? That's the thing, is you have to figure out, like, which one is going to take precedence here. I have a good example of that if you would like to hear it.
Sure.
So my spirituality is really important to me, and my relationship with my sweetheart is very important to me, because this is the first and only healthy relationship I have ever had in my entire life. When he was 60 and I was 55 is when we met. I'm 60 now. And so having this relationship with him is really important. But what I've done in the past is let my like habits like journaling and praying and all that kind of stuff go by the wayside in relationships. And so, I'm like, my relationship is in my top 5 values and my spirituality is in my top 5 values. There's a conflict here. And so I said to him, listen, in order for me to be this wonderful human being that you love, she needs to make conscious contact with her higher power multiple times a day and for long periods in the morning and at night. So I will be journaling and I will be praying and I will be meditating and I will be saying affirmations. And I said it right from the very beginning of the relationship because this is who I am. And so I don't want to lose my relationship, but if I lose my spirituality, I could very well lose. I would definitely lose my relationship if I lost my spirituality.
What a great example.
Yeah. So I have a question about that. So you said in the beginning of your relationship, which is great, obviously, and an excellent point and most ideal to set up your boundary with somebody. What do you suggest for somebody who gets into a relationship and the honeymoon period is over and then you're like, oh, I didn't set any boundaries here. How do you
I mean, I think that's always the hardest part is setting boundaries with people that have been around you, not just in a new relationship, but for decades. That's the hardest part because we've always been teaching people how to treat us. And when we set boundaries, we're very purposefully teaching people how to treat us. And if they've been around in our lives, we are reteaching them how to treat us. So it really depends on the situation, on your relationship with them. But sooner is better than later. So I used to always wait for the right time, for a conversation. Here's the thing, the right time, right now. That's the right time. There's a saying, it may be a Chinese proverb, but it's like the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. The second best time is today. Right. So the best time to set a boundary was at the beginning of the relationship, but the second best time is right now. And then the other thing is just being honest and saying, I was so swept up in the beginning of the relationship that I wasn't really paying attention to my needs. And I'm realizing that some things are not working for me. And this is about me, not about you. Like you want to keep the focus on yourself. And that is one of the most important things I teach my clients is keep the focus on yourself. And I teach a variety of ways to do that. And saying things like, one of the tips on the handout that you were talking about, Nancy, is to depersonalize boundary setting for the other person. In other words, you make it about you, not them. And one of the ways to do that is to have a rule. And sometimes you come right out and say, I have a new rule. And other times you just imply it. So implying would be like, I'm trying to think of what would be a boundary in a relationship. Like I'm no longer going to text you back within 5 minutes of the time that you text. I just can't keep up with that. Instead of saying, I have a new rule, I'm no longer, you just say it. But you could say, I have a new rule. I'm not going to be spending more than $50 a week on dining out. It's just not working for my budget.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Oh, wait, I had a really good question about that and I lost it. Oh, what about setting boundaries? This might be controversial. So I think I've talked about this. I can't remember where, but you can hold a conference. You can be the town crier in town square and say, hear ye, here's my boundary, right? Or you can set the boundary by your behavior. So let's go back to the text example. So do you think in order to effectively set the boundary, you have to say, listen, it doesn't work for me to text you back within 5 minutes. So I'm not going to be able to do that moving forward. Or can you simply stop responding in 5 minutes?
So it's really a matter of personal choice and depends on the relationship. So I'm in recovery with a lot of people that have abandonment issues. So I would go the extra and say, so that they don't think something is wrong, something has changed and it's me and it's my standards, which by the way, that is how I define a boundary. It's your standards for your life.
I love this so much. This is so
I
great.
got over 25 episodes of my podcast specifically about boundaries, so you're going to love them.
Woohoo.
I know. I just binged. I just listened to one about enabling behavior. That was a doozy. Yeah. Right. Beth, you have anything in here before I keep going? Because I have 10,000 questions.
No, I'm going to let you keep going, Nance. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry for the paper ruffling, Podsters. I cannot figure out how to do this better. So I heard you, or I saw maybe on your website, Barb, you said, this is, if you can teach me how to do this, I stay out of situations which drain me. And I know that's about boundaries, right? I know that's about either not going or setting limits. I'm going to go for an hour, or I'm going to go and I'm not going to do this, blah, 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 blah. Tell me how you stay out of situations that don't drain you.
You mean that do drain me? Stay out of situations that drain me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't do it anymore. Like so here's the thing. Setting boundaries actually gives you so much energy because for me, like that manipulating thing of trying to get people to like me, that's a control behavior, right? And what that means is we're trying to control things outside of ourselves, and we literally only have control of what's going on in here. So when you stop trying to control things, that's an endless drain of energy. So you get energy from that. You also, like people that have healthy boundaries, take good care of themselves, follow through for themselves, do things that give them energy. And when I get reinforced for having really good energy and I change my mind and decide I'm going to go ahead and do something against my better judgment and drains my energy, I get negatively reinforced for doing it.
100%.
And so I'm just not doing it. So one of the things I do is I call it naming the terms of the engagement. So it's like what you said, I can only stay for an hour, or I say to somebody, I can do this or I can do that. Which one do you want? And people are more likely to take one of the choices that you give them rather than make up a third thing. Or if you give them parameters, they're more likely to go along with that than to negotiate with you. But for me, I have so much that I want to do with my life, and I love my life, and I'm thriving, and I love everything that I do. I'm done with doing shit I don't want to do.
Love it.
Or
Love
stuff
it.
that drains me. There are things that I enjoy that drain me. I can't think of anything right now, but I know there are, but I just don't. It's just like I walked around depleted, exhausted, with a sense of urgency at all times. I was constantly like, what is he thinking or she thinking, or how can I make this situation, blah, 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 blah. And, like I have like quiet in my head for long periods of time. Well, not long, but I never had any ever for a moment.
Yeah, I like to say I only have a finite amount of energy, and I
Right.
decide where it goes because
Right. Yeah.
I can't get it back.
Right. Yeah. Something that I've heard a lot of people in recovery say is I only have so many spoons. And like, I have 5 spoons for the day, and you're 3 of them, and I'm not giving you 3 spoons. So, and then when other people like speak that language, it's easy to say, I don't have any spoons left or too many spoons. And everybody gets it. It's like, oh, okay. It's a way of saying no, that without saying the word no with people that have the same code.
Do you find, or did you find people pushing back when you try to set a boundary?
Oh,
and if
hell
so,
yeah.
so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the hard part right there, because many boundaries you don't ever discuss with people. But so I want to say first, before I say how to manage it, is that some people push back because they forget because you never had boundaries before. Some people push back because they don't believe you because you've never had boundaries before, or because they have shitty boundaries, so it's impossible to respect other people's boundaries. Which, by the way, most people with healthy boundaries don't understand that they're violating other people's boundaries. They only see people violating theirs, but chances are high if people are walking all over you, you're probably walking all over other people too. You just don't know. But anyway, so it's learning how to respond to those pushback behaviors is one of the most difficult parts of setting boundaries. So it's getting over the guilt and shame and how to follow through when someone pushes back on you. So the most common response is to simply repeat what you said. So let's say I said to somebody, please don't put that there. And they put it there. And I say, please don't put that there. And they put it there. And then I say, I asked you not to put that there. And see how my voice is nice and calm? Please don't put that there. I've asked you not to put that there. Perhaps you didn't hear me. And then you get to decide if they keep doing it, like what you're going to do. But this is the key to boundaries. They're your boundaries. You are in charge of them. Some people think I'm just going to set a boundary and it's going to work like an electric dog fence and people will just get zapped and they'll know that's not how it works. If somebody is not honoring your boundary, that is your problem, not theirs. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay, right. So it's your problem because it's your boundary. And so I think the number one myth about boundaries is that when I start setting boundaries, I'll be able to control other people. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen, right? So setting boundaries is about you and for you. It's about you getting clarity about what's okay and not okay with you, what you like, want, need, and prefer, and then building your life in such a way that you have those things in your life and you don't have the things that you don't prefer and want and need and like. And if somebody else doesn't agree with you or doesn't cooperate with you, then you have to decide what you're going to do about it. And the reality is that some of us are going to lose some people.
So here's my question.
Boundaries.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. And if it's repeated and repeated and repeated, and depending on how important the boundary is to you, you need to make the decision if you want this person in your life, or if you can have your healthy lifestyle and live in integrity, and also have this person in your life. What if you don't have a choice? What if it's your boss?
Well, you actually do have a choice. There's no such thing as having no choice. It may be a shitty choice, but it's a choice. So here's what I would say. If you feel like you absolutely, under zero circumstances, would you ever leave that job, then you have to acknowledge this is a choice that I have made. I have made the choice to stay in this job. I have made the choice to stay working for this person. Stop fucking bitching about it. Because this is a choice that you made.
It's interesting. Right. Like, stop bitching because you have a choice.
You chose it.
Yes.
Right? It may suck as a choice, but you have chosen to stay there. And you talking negatively about them and blaming them, that's a victim mentality. That's another thing that happens when you start setting boundaries, is you come out of victim mentality because you start to see, like, I'm in charge of my life. I am not a victim of the circumstances around me. And complaining about your boss does not make your boss better. In fact, it magnifies the situation. And so I've never been a corporate person, but I worked at Yale University for a long time. And in some respects, it's very similar to the corporate environment. It's a lot different than being an entrepreneur. And one of the things I did, I loved my boss, but I also bitched about her behind her back for 17 years and then I got into recovery and I'm like, oh my God, that's called gossip. I did not know that, which seems insane because it's the definition of gossip. And so I got into recovery and it was like, oh my God, when I found out I was gossiping, I had to clean that up. And when I stopped gossiping about her, I was astonished that, like, I don't know, 80 something % of my resentment against her went away. And it's not that she wasn't doing anything. It was that I was magnifying what she was doing by talking about it. And here's the other thing, because I was around longer than anybody else and I had more authority than anybody but her, I created a culture of expectation. We don't fix problems. We bitch about them. We don't go to her and say, hey, this isn't really working. Can we try something different? No, we just talk about her behind her back. And the process that I went through with my smaller team and my colleagues was just absolutely miraculous. Because what I realized was clearly I was waiting for her to change after 17 years of not changing and being the same person the whole time. And I didn't understand that was what I was doing. And so what I wanted her to do was take charge of certain things. And I was just like, okay, wait, I'm going to take charge. So I came out of the victim mentality that she's going to turn into this person I want her to be. And I'm going to take authority over those things that she just doesn't even pay attention to. And the team got so much more effective, and we enjoyed our job so much more, and we had so much better communication and all that stuff. So, poor boundaries permeate every area of your life. It's really incredible. And, I'd like to give you an example of like, what if the person doesn't change, right? So my older brother is a very loud person and he's super political. And I gave up politics and news a number of years ago. It's just not good for my mental health. And when I got into recovery and I started setting boundaries, I thought what that meant was I could just go to him and say, hey, I don't want to talk about politics anymore. And also, my ears hurt. Can you talk a little quieter? And I thought that was setting boundaries.
Right.
That's not setting boundaries. That's telling him what I want. Right. And I realized, oh, wait, I can't turn him into a quiet talker. I can't turn him into a non-political talker. It's just not possible. This is who he is and what he does. So I realized that for me personally, I have to spend way less time with him. So I spend smaller portions of time with him, and I do it much less frequently because it's so difficult. The other thing is that he is, I guess I will say he's pretty self-centered. And I went to go visit him after I took a 6-week long solo road trip across the country in a camper van, and I saw 6 national parks. Now, you would think if you knew that about somebody that, I don't know, you might ask them something about that trip. That seems pretty normal to me. Well, when I went to go visit him, I knew he wasn't going to ask me. So I was like, he's not going to ask. 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 Like I literally talking to myself the whole way there, walking up to the door. He's not going to ask. He's not going to ask. He's not going to ask. He didn't ask. Not one. I was visiting him for an hour. Actually, I think it was 59 minutes because that's my limit. And it was the first time ever in my life that I was able to be with him and hold on to the expectation of he is this way and I'm not going to change him. But the amount of work that I had to do emotionally to be able to sustain that this is who he is belief was not worth the time for me. So I almost never see him anymore because it's such a drain for me emotionally because I want him to be different and he's not.
So I think it's a powerful example. My question is, though, why couldn't he, he's just an example, especially because we're coming up on an election season. Why couldn't the conversation be, I love spending time with you. Politics is triggering for me. I'd prefer it if we don't talk about politics. Then
so he could do that for like 5 minutes.
Right.
And then he just he lives, breathes, eats, and sleeps politics.
Okay.
And so I just don't anymore.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
Oof. Intense. Wow.
Yeah. And I honestly didn't understand how difficult he was for me to be around because he always was. And to me, that was life. And now that I have a lot more peace and serenity in my life, I'm like, that sucks. I don't like being in a place in a time where I'm like triggered and on edge and everything is loud and fast. And I like peace.
I love it. It's protecting your peace, really, right? Yeah. Beth, any more questions from you?
Well, I don't think so. This was so great. What a wonderful conversation. So much amazing information.
Yeah.
Can you hear the lawnmower outside my window?
I can.
I can't.
So Barb, I'm going to lean in here. Tell us how people can work with you. Tell us how people can get in touch with you. Tell us everything.
All right. So my favorite place on social media to hang out is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there and let me know that you found me from this podcast. Speaking of podcasts, my podcast is called Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. You can find it on any podcast outlet, or you can go to fragmentedtowhole.com. And I do group and private boundaries coaching. I also have a VIP day, which is for women business owners, called Feminine Biz Boundaries. So that is a 1 day, very intensive one-on-one workshop where I help you basically stop being overwhelmed and learn how to earn more money. I've developed it because I do a lot of networking with women entrepreneurs, most of whom suck at boundaries. And so we help you like make action plans for your business in alignment with your values. And then I help you hold yourself accountable for that. But I also do private and group coaching. So my website is higherpowercc.com and all the stuff is on there.
And this will absolutely all be in the show notes. Parting comments or thoughts, Barb? We so appreciate the 45-minute education on how to live in alignment with your values. I mean, I just think it's so important what you're doing. Anything else that you want to make sure that we talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I alluded to it earlier about keeping the focus on yourself. I tell people my top 5 rules of setting boundaries are: keep the focus on yourself, 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 keep the focus on yourself.
Perfect.
Because it's so important. And so here's just a really basic example. If you're in the car with somebody and you don't like the way they're driving, instead of saying, "You're driving like a maniac," you say, "I don't feel safe." When you keep the focus on yourself, people are so much more likely to hear you, and it's hard for them to dispute if you feel safe or not. But when you say you, then they're more likely to be defensive. And especially if you say something like, you're driving like a maniac, it's easy for them to dispute, like, what does that mean? Or if you say,
Right.
you never, or you always. And so if you want to reduce conflict, start keeping the focus on yourself. Use I language.
Love it. That's also a very powerful negotiation tactic to talk about yourself, because you can't argue with how someone feels.
Right.
Right. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right, everybody. Rush.
Thank you
to
so
Barb's
much.
website. Hit her up on Instagram.
Yeah, she's great on Instagram. She's got all kinds of really
tons of free stuff. Yeah, tons. Like I got reels and reels and reels and reels and posts and all kinds of stuff. So yeah.
Reels for days. Thank you, Barb.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Woo! That was something.
Wow, that Barb Nangle from High Power Coaching. I don't even know what to say.
I'm a little verklempt.
I am too. Although my key takeaway, which I will start saying all the time, I only have so many spoons in a day.
So tell me about that, because I didn't understand that. I don't get it.
It's like I only have so many spoons in a day. So it's like I only have so many what's to give. Right?
Yeah.
Not wasting one of mine on your thing.
Right. What's the spoon thing, though? I didn't get the spoon thing.
I guess it's just I don't know. It's just somehow they must have picked up that terminology. I only have so many spoons.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. By the way, did you catch in Podsters? Maybe you did, because we kind of breezed over it. I wanted to go back to it. People who set boundaries don't realize that they're not honoring other people's boundaries. Did you catch that?
I did catch that. And I wanted to go back because one of the things I wanted to ask about was, can we talk about the perspective of the boundary breaker? But it sounds like, if you're pointing out that somebody else is a boundary breaker, are you a boundary breaker too?
I would like to think that I'm not.
I know.
Because I understand the value of that. Yeah, we might need to have her back on.
Yeah, we might have to revisit that, get a little more detail on that.
So one of the things that resonated with me the most,
yes,
there's a few and I have a lot of them, but this one I think will help me the most. It's about when people don't honor your boundaries repeatedly, right?
Oh, yes.
And then it is a choice. And yeah, I use the example of a bad boss. You are choosing to stay there. It is your choice. You might not think you have a choice, right? You need the job, you need the money, you need the income, whatever the case may be. It's still a choice. And to me, that takes the angst out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to the example of the boss. They don't honor your boundaries. They don't honor your boundaries. Well, then the next time something happens, to me, it's like water off a duck's back. Like, well, you know what? Yes, that irritates me. I made a conscious decision to stay here.
Right.
I made a conscious decision to stay in this relationship, whatever the case may be. So I gave up my right to get mad about this because I'm choosing now to stay. Knowing the behavior isn't going to change, I'm now choosing to stay.
Right. And I think the hard thing there that requires maturity is to say, okay, I'm going to remove the emotional, irrational, reactive piece of that and just work based on the facts, right? And the strategy. And I think that's where it can be hard for some people. I love how she called them your standards.
I loved it. Standards for your life. I love it.
Great.
I love it. I liked kind versus nice.
Me too. And I love that kind people tell the truth and they're honest because let's face it, sometimes the truth isn't nice. It's not what we wanted to hear, but I don't know. I don't really want somebody to tell me what I want to hear. I want the truth. I don't want to waste my time on something that's not truth.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful too. And then that it's an experimental process and the right time is now.
Yes.
Because how many times, I can think of myself, how many times have I wanted to set a boundary with someone, but I haven't because I'm afraid I won't do it perfectly. Right? Like you're not going to do it perfectly the first 2 times you do it.
You're not. Yeah. We didn't even get into this, but the whole thing when people say, well, I'd like to set a boundary, but I'll feel bad. And what will that person think? And I'll hurt their feelings and they'll be angry and all the elements of what you can't control when you set a boundary, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, don't you just feel like her house is full of peace? Like if we were to walk into her house right now, it's probably peace. The vibe is probably like so peaceful and welcoming and calming, right?
Yes, right. How about this one? Well, I don't have it word for word, but values do not mean the same thing to different people.
Right. Yep. For sure. Yep. Yeah. That's a, when I was learning how to be a salesperson, I would say, tell me what you mean by that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to live a healthy lifestyle. What does that mean to you? High gain question. Tell me what that means. What does that look like?
Right.
And you're right. Cause it might be, to me, it might be going to bed at 7. To you, it might be, only having a bottle and a half of wine. I don't know.
Right.
Interesting. And if you're setting a boundary around that particular value, it's even more important that you don't assume that the person you're boundarying has the same interpretation of that value.
Right.
Like peace. I would say living in peace is one of my values. Having peace. So that means a lot of different things to different people.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Woo!
All right. Well,
that was great. That was really great. That was great. I still need some more time to process. Barb, thank you. If you're listening to this, we thought you were fantastic.
Amazing.
Podsters, keep the feedback coming. We're going to start playing around with a poll. If you listen on Spotify, we can ask you questions and you can answer them. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can hit us up in the DMs, in the IMs, in the AM, in the PM, whenever, right?
That's right. And if there is an expert or specialist that you would like to hear from, we can find one and interview them.
For sure. All right. Peace out, Podsters.
All right. Peace out, everyone. Respect your boundaries. Hold your standards.
Yeah, baby.
That's a wrap, Podsters. If you were thinking of someone as you were listening to this, share it. If you nodded along and even shouted out a couple of yes, leave us a review. Please, please, please. If you want to make sure you don't miss next week's episode, hit that follow button.
And you can find us everywhere. And if you would like to learn more about us and exactly what we do, take a look in the show notes for our deets. See you
next week.
Podsters.